And welcome to the Dart Points podcast. Michael, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you, Will?
Good. I'm good. It's been a little bit since we've done a podcast. We've been busy lately, but we definitely wanted to get this next one in, which is going to be fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So we the idea is we were trying to get two podcasts a month, and sometimes that's really easy, and we can get the content rolled out, snap, and then other times it's like if we can get one out a month, it's great. So sometimes it's like, oh boy, we're pushing over a month. We need to get a podcast out. So, but this in no means means that this podcast is a filler podcast. This is actually something that came along really good with one of our partners. And if you're watching the video podcast, you'll see we have Mr. Dave Gorman and Lee Rivas from Veeam. And today we're going to talk about some of the cool things that came out of the Veeam Resiliency Summit 2023, which happened, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago.
Maybe. It seems like it was like this week sometime, like Monday.
I still think it's September. So, I mean, we're in November.
So we wanted to talk about some things that are coming out. But before we get started, Lee and Dave, tell us about yourself. How long you've been with Veeam? What do you do there, and what's your roles, and what do you love working at Veeam?
Yeah, I'll take that. So David Gorman, I'm the Veeam Service Provider Account Executive for the Southeast, and I'm responsible for the relationship between Veeam and DartPoints from a service provider perspective. So I've been with Veeam for 10 years. So I've been doing the service provider business from when it was very, very young. And it's been really good. So I've got to meet a lot of different service providers. DartPoints to me is a standout. So one of the better partners that we work with, no question. So awesome. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity, and I'll pass it over to you, Lee.
Yeah. Hey guys, Lee Rivas here. So I'm the VCSP SE here with Veeam. I cover the Southeast with Dave Gorman, of course. So that spans from Georgia, Carolinas all the way to Kentucky, and then I also cover Gulf Shores, so Florida all the way to Arkansas. I've been in IT for the past maybe let's just call it almost 2 decades. Started with help desk from sysadmin to systems engineer. Helping engineering and designing virtualization networks, things like that internally for my company, and then kind of went over to the MSP side. Where I did the same things for, other end users as an MSP, and then, using Veeam. So I had an opportunity to come over to Veeam as a sales engineer. I jumped on it. And so I've been here about eight or so years, covering all the segments, SLED, Fed, commercial. So, and then with VCSP for the past 2 years. So as a VCSP, we partner with DartPoints. Like David said, one of our largest service providers that covers the Southeast. So excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, it's been really a good collaboration with you guys. I mean, even back when we were, Legacy Venue, right? I knew Dave even back in those days, and I've really had the opportunity working with some really good people at the Veeam side. John Maybe, and you name it. We've worked with those guys, and fantastic group of people.
Yep. But
let's talk about what is on the agenda today. So today we're going to talk about what's new, or some of the highlights are coming from the Veeam 12.1 update, or the 23H2 update, as it's also called. Mm-hmm. That should be coming out, I would think, before the end of the year.
They say it's ready when it's ready. It could be next week. It could be the end of the year. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that we always talk about these things that are, it's in beta right now. So with things being in beta, there's always things subject to slight changes and timeline changes and whatnot. But we definitely think that there's going to be this is a big update. I mean, I think there was someone at Veeam said, we could have called it Veeam 13, but we didn't want to use an unlucky number. So we wanted to keep 12.1.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
But this is a really big upgrade, and one of the big features of this upgrade is cybersecurity, which is going to make Michael like really happy. He's already giddy. He, texting me at midnight. I'm watching the Veeam Resiliency Summit. It's amazing. So it's a lot of stuff to unpack there. A lot of cybersecurity features, and we'll go through them on this podcast. And then, some of the other features we'll mention toward the end if we have some time. We'll talk about some of the other cool stuff. But I would say this update really does address some of the things that customers have wanted with the aspect of cybersecurity and backups.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and with version 12, that was a huge security release too. We called it the geek release, and the .1 is, just above and beyond that for sure. Veeam is really easy to install and deploy on Windows machines. So a lot of things can be missed. So just, things like the best practice, like the things that we're going to talk about here today, will definitely help address, backup is definitely a target for ransomware, of course. So in order to secure it and make sure that we have the ability to recover those is huge. So Veeam addressed that, and it shows here. So there's a lot of good features for security. There's a lot of good features for integration as well. So we'll talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it, right? So I will say we'll start off with some of the things that we've talked about in kind of our pre-call, and some of the things we've talked about on our show notes. And the one thing that we'll start off with is, what the hell is a Yara rule? Right? Yet another recursive algorithm, Yara.
Acronym.
Okay. It's an acronym. Yes. And really cool stuff. And basically there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Yara is basically a kind of a definition set that you can pull down rules for different types of cybersecurity events or malware or cyber threats, but also really you can create your own custom Yara rules to really search for anything that you want to, whether it's like PHI data or social security numbers, personal type things. So if you're looking for certain aspects of data that's in your backups, this tool can help you find them very, very easily.
Yeah, so this goes above and beyond the secure restore, the sure backup, leveraging malware, antivirus to find malware, things like that, right? This goes above and beyond. Yara, like you said, is open source that is indicative of to find in things that are indicative of any kind of ransomware activity. So, for example, looking for like .onion for that little splash page that comes up and says, "Hey, you got hit by ransomware," right? Looking for any kind of, so on the Yara side, so on the sure backup and the ability to do kind of a secure restore, we have the second option on top of ransomware, antivirus scan, to use Yara definitions to find anything that's so this is updated by a community on a weekly basis, probably even more frequently than that. So if so this is a really good use case. If you know that you got hit by ransomware and you want to scan all of your backups to see if there's any kind of specific definitions to this ransomware, you can easily inject a Yara rule that says, you can pull this from the open source too, to help you find that malware that you just got hit with, to scan all of your backups to make sure that, hey, all right, these backups are okay. Let's do some further investigation and then restore so it flags a certain thing. So.
Yeah, what I like about it is, like, for instance, let's say there was a cybersecurity event or a virus or something like this. Let's say WannaCry, right? And no, your systems are reporting clean, no issues that you see, but you want to be absolutely sure that none of your backups have been infected, or none of your data, production data in backups is bad, right? So you can actually go choose a specific Yara rule for like WannaCry, and then run that analysis against your backups and actually feel 100% confident that your backups aren't going to succumb to that vulnerability or that
absolutely
threat, right?
And then it like I said, it's an open source community, so any other end users or company that has been hit by something, they have some kind of definitions, so you can use multiple Yara rules at the same time to kind of scan for multiple things as well. So it's a like I said, continuously updated database. that you can leverage on top of your antivirus for very specific, indicators of malware in your backups. And then if you did get hit by backups, we can get streamlined and fine tune that search throughout your backups.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's going to be good. And the tool, the actual interface is all in the Veeam backup and replication console, right? So you can do this from in a single pane of glass.
Yeah, and absolutely. They definitely did, during resiliency, like it's super easy to be able to use, right? To like search for latest or the most recent clean backup, and then to pick the YAR rule. It's all right there, right? There's no need to go into another portal or do anything like that. Veeam did a really good job of making it easy for the user to be able to kind of execute that and kick that off.
Yeah, and the big thing, if it's easy, then people will use it, because if it's something that's really difficult or it takes a lot of multiple, if you make a product so easy to use that your end user doesn't really find it a chore to use, they'll use it. And that's really key to cybersecurity.
I'm reminding you on that statement when we talk about Sure Backup, because we made that even easier. So
absolutely. We will definitely talk about Sure Backup. So YAR rules, that is amazing. And then, we're going to kind of go down the list here. Inline ransomware detection.
Yes.
Now, I think this is really one of the cool things that's got me excited, because it will actually, in real time, detect any type of cyber event or cyber threat that's made its way into backups. And it does this in two ways. There's two, if you will, data engines, ransomware detection engines that run the system, right? The first is the data stream analysis, which is basically, it's looking at the image level data of your backups and employing something called entropy change detection, using AI and machine learning, and actually looking at what's going on in your backups in real time.
Yeah,
that's freaking amazing. That's really, really cool.
Think about that. Yeah, you're touching every single component of your customer's site using Veeam, right? So we're backing up all the data points, all that streaming through Veeam, streaming through the proxies. While that data is being streamed, we can look inside of that data to see if there's anything indicative, like you said, of any kind of ransomware activity. Entropy analysis using ML and AI to see, any kind of like bulk changes that happen in bulk encryption, things like that, right? So that's
and the thing is, this is not like an antivirus. You're not like bundling an antivirus into this, in that this is actually it's actually the engine and the definitions even are coming from Veeam. It's a purpose-built engine from Veeam to do this work.
Correct. Yeah, using AI and machine learning, so it looks at what you have already and looks at different changes within your backups, right? So the second point that you're going to talk about was the indexing. So we can index those files to absolutely see any kind of changes. So we can compare indexing to the latest backup to see if there's a huge amount of change. That can be, hey, we can flag that for any kind of suspicious activity, where we can then go back to the YAR rules and go back to Sure Backup and the Secure Restore to make sure that, hey, let's do some investigation on that.
Gotcha. So so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask, did I understand this correctly? And that this inline ransomware scanners also going to look for like ransomware notes and like dark web links that are hidden in files?
Yes. The .onion link that I mentioned, it's going to look for things like that. It's going to look for links that, links for cybersecurity payment, right? So for cryptocurrency, it'll definitely look for all those things as well. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Absolutely very cool. So the data stream analysis engine is working through looking at your image level backups, but we also have the file system analysis engine, which if you're using anything like an agent-based backup, maybe on a physical server or something like that, then that is actually just looking at your index file for the presence of the suspicious files or malware extensions and things like this. So
on that, even on your VM backups, you have a checkbox for indexing on your files. So even if it's an image level from VMware, from Hyper-V, from Nutanix, from AWS, we can index. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a physical server, to be clear.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, so and the other thing I like, another thing is with the built-in definitions and these things, this can also be, so the results from this real-time scanning or the schedule scanning can also be forwarded to a SIM.
Correct.
A SIM tool, and then that can trigger alerting, run books, things like this. So that's amazing as well.
Right. Yeah, we can leverage syslogs. Yeah, whatever SIEM that you're using today, we can pump out those logs, those data points to whatever you're using today. So, you know, I know Dartpoints has a SOC. They have some kind of like SIEM or whatever XDR that you can leverage those either syslogs. We also have APIs that this will pump out as well. So, and then you guys can leverage that for to have better insight from your SOC, from your backups to see all that data kind of flow. And you know, so for example, if you see the inline ransomware detection detect something, you'll have that visibility, you know, that visible all the way to wherever you're normally using today. On a
and
absolutely.
And it's pretty cool because from my understanding, you can have that syslog, you know, point point to your SIM and basically alert on things like failed MFA logins, attempt to delete backups or repositories, and that's really cool, right? Because obviously this is a backup technology, right? Where if somebody is trying to go and delete those backups, having the ability to be alerted on something like that is really important because you want to protect those.
Yeah, and that's straight out of the box from VBR. We also have that same integration with Veeam that goes beyond the backup infrastructure. We can plug into your VMware environment, your Hyper-V environment. So anything that's, you know, any kind of alerting that you can do there, anything that's, you know, for example, we have different alerts that, you know, that detect any kind of like high spikes in CPU usage, high spikes in data store IOPS. If you have a high spike in data store IOPS, you might be getting hit by ransomware. There might be some encryption going on. So Veeam can pick that up and capture that, and then using syslog can bring that all the way to the tools that you're using today as well.
If I'm a customer of a service provider that has this early detection, you know, type of ability, it would make me feel a lot better, right? To know that the company who I've trusted my data with has the ability to react or even be proactive in mitigating a ransomware attack, right? So,
absolutely. And what have we always said, Michael? Security is a layered approach, right? So the more layers you can put on, you know, no one single solution protects you completely. So it's all a matter of layering things to make sure that you're covered and then changing as the industry changes, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's you know, the inline ransomware engine, and I think that's really going to be amazing, the detection piece. The other thing is, we mentioned a minute ago that the definitions are updated automatically. So there's a check mark that you say, please update automatically. Veeam takes care of it for you. And then the other thing that's kind of, I noticed also I really like is as you're doing your backups and as you're looking through your store points, you can go back and actually see, you know, when you're doing these scans, doing YAR rules, whatnot, it'll actually tell you which backups maybe have some fishy stuff going on, right? So there's a way to mark your backups as clean or dirty. And in the Veeam UI, you can go back and look and say, oh, everything is green. I don't see any little bugs. Backups are good.
I have the beta spun up. If I mean, we can show that after, you know, this discussion here, but yeah, it has a little bug for any kind of data point where there might be some suspicious malware where you can identify that. So when you're going to do a restore and you're looking at all your different checkpoints, it flags all of those different checkpoints with a little bug. So then you can go through and right click and just do a real quick YARA scan, malware scan.
Lee is getting excited. He's like, want me to show it to you?
Guys, I'm really excited about this. This one. I get to talk a lot more about security, so I kind of feel like Michael right now. But
Well, you know what's funny though? When I said we were going to do a Veeam podcast, Michael's like, "Oh, it's like data protection, data protection." And Mike's our cybersecurity guy, right? And then last night we were at an event, and Michael comes up to me. He's like, "Man, I saw that resiliency summit. It looked really cool. I'm excited about this." I'm like, "Yeah,
there you go.
There's going to be a backup admin."
I love it.
Anyway,
backup is a major component of data security. I mean, it might not be the coolest thing, but it's extremely important. So.
It used to not be a cool thing. Now you're like the superhero who recovers your data, and you come back and it's like, yes,
yeah.
Instead of,
because you have all these layers of defense, like you said, right? Our job is kind of the last layer of defense. Of course, we can help with reporting, we can help with the front gates, and this kind of helps, integrate those things. But you don't want to buy one tool that covers all of the components of like the NIST framework, for example, where you have, response and recover. And, we definitely specialize in recover. But to partner with someone like Dartpoints that can cover the whole NIST framework, that, to stop it at the gates, and, if it kind of goes through the gates, hey, we have the way to recover and, kind of protect that data in the back end so that you can recover. So that we try to partner with other service providers and other software components that can kind of cover the whole spectrum, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think what's there is, like, a couple of years ago with backups, it was kind of the 3-2-1 rule, right? And you guys since then have really doubled down on, okay, that's cool, and it's great that you have backups, but let's really secure those backups, right? And let's build in the ability to alert, right, when we think something is going on, but really help you investigate, if you have problems with your backups, and not just if you have problems with backups, but like specifically which backups are bad.
Right.
So kudos, you guys are doing a really great job. Love the updates for 12 and 12.1.
But there's more.
All
right. So the other thing that's really cool, and I think this is actually, Michael, you're going to like this, is the Veeam Incident API, right? And this is really cool because what this is going to do is this is an open API developed by Veeam that allows partner companies who are doing EDR, XDR, who have those engines where basically there's real-time notification between the EDR system and your Veeam backup server. So for instance, maybe life is good, but something comes up in your server network, and your EDR goes off, right when the event, so the event drops, someone gets funky with your system, your EDR alerts you, but it'll also alert Veeam. And what's cool about that is Veeam will get that alert and go, whoops, let's do an ad hoc backup. And we can write that off to like out of band storage or whatnot. And now you can pretty much ensure you're going to have a clean backup before anything happens. And that out of band backup can be immutable. Of course, now we've said the word immutable. We all have to take a shot, because it was ReFS, block cloning, immutability. Now, of course, AI that we all have to, chug when those words come out. But this is really cool too. I mean, this is really nice that your EDR system can trigger these things to make Veeam take action. So you're absolutely sure you have the latest, not only a good backup, but the latest backup before things go south.
Yeah, so we partner with Sophos on that. Level 1, that's our first iteration. That's our first partnership. Of course, there's going to be more to come, but yeah, you said it best. As soon as, so not only can we pump those syslogs to those SIEMs and things like that, but we can use MDRs and XDRs and EDRs and all the EDRs and pull that data back. So we can get those alerts and we can go ahead and kick off a very quick, very clean copy. So there's minimal to no. So, we're a huge proponent on shortening your RPOs. So this is definitely, instead of like, hey, for this particular VM, we didn't back it up, maybe like 10 days ago, or maybe ransomware happened or whatever. But as soon as we kick off that backup, then, you know, we're kind of shortening that RPO. We're having a backup before everything just goes crazy, right?
Well, the integration and data telemetry exchange by itself is cool, but I think one of the things that you had mentioned that's really cool about it is the fact that it's automated, right? Like it'd be one thing if it was like, okay, I'm telling Veeam about this, and Veeam like kicks off an email to the sysadmin, and the sysadmin, you know, wakes up in the middle of the night and he's, you know, rubbing his eyes, you know, looking at his computer. All right, let me kick off a backup, but it does it automatically, right? So that's, you know, kind of chef's kiss to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually a really nice feature. And we're looking forward to seeing more integrations, you know, Sophos for now, but I think as the product matures and more partnerships come along, you know, we're going to hope to see more good, you know, more good EDR products. Not that Sophos is bad, but more EDR products into the environment. So
more the merrier.
Absolutely. The more the merrier, the more protected you are, and gives in the end of the day, gives the customer more choice. And
I think it's going to be kind of like what we're talking about next, the AV component of it. So, you know, we can use different antiviruses to do, you know, malware scans and things like that. You know, we 100% support a handful of them, but the ones that we don't, we have some kind of script that lets, you know, that kind of enables that whole feature. So I would think, you know, maybe I'm talking, but maybe we'll have something like that for this as well.
Yeah. So one of the things, so Veeam has always had the ability to integrate with AVs, right? Even back when it was like version 11. I mean, this has been around for a while, so it's not like this is new, but usually the AV would get kicked off while you're doing a restore, right? So you go kick off a restore and you say, hey, there's a little check mark that says, please scan my data as it's recovering, and then let me know what's going on. With this will actually allow you to do it not only when you're doing your recovery, which you can still do, but you can also do it when backups are happening, and you can do it on a schedule. So maybe you don't want to do a restore every time you do a backup, you want to check for ransomware or something bad, but you can actually basically like scan ad hoc of your backups once a week, once a day, on a schedule, right? And this can also be integrated with things like YARA rules. So maybe you're like, I want to make sure that all of my backups don't have this data in it, right? This good or bad data, right? Because it doesn't have to necessarily be viruses or ransomware. It could be like social security numbers or something like this. And this can be done automatically, right? Ad hoc or through schedule.
Yes.
And then, like you were saying, it's a wide. I think it's five antiviral tools now.
Correct.
I don't remember each one. I know Microsoft Defender, Kaspersky, ESET, Sophos, and then there's another one I can't think of.
I can't remember either. And then the ones, of course, that we don't integrate with, we can add a very simple script to that antivirus that identifies Veeam as, hey, we want to use this integration, and then you're able to use that. So that is done through, and you mentioned the ability to scan on a schedule. That's called Sure Backup. It's also called Sure Replica for your replicas, but it's just Sure Backup in the UI. That's something that we've had for a while, where we can spin up a data lab, like an isolated bubble, to test groups of applications together. So think of like an ERP system. You got IIS server, web server, SQL server. You can throw a domain controller. They can all talk to each other, but they won't affect production, right? With that data lab, then we integrated with antivirus to where, okay, on top of like making sure your backups are fully recoverable. So, we're doing things like ping tests, heartbeat tests of the VMware tools, making sure that those VMs are fully recoverable when you need to recover. But then we can do an antivirus scan. So this new Sure Backup that we're talking about, we don't necessarily have to have a data lab. And that's a good thing, because not a lot of customers, for me, I think it's very simple to set up and deploy. It's a lightweight Linux VM inside of your VMware environment or Hyper-V that provides that isolated bubble, but it does kind of need a little bit of networking knowledge in order to do this kind of stuff. But most customers, they just want, hey, we just want to run antivirus on our backups to make sure they're clean. Hey, we just want to run these YARA rules. So we're not doing away with the data labs. It's still a good value add where you want to have the ability to test your applications in this isolated bubble. But you don't have to have that as a requirement anymore. That means it doesn't have to be VMs anymore. It can be physical servers, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it very easy to test your backups where before like the data lab was a requirement. But now we can kind of do that on a schedule just to look for anything indicative of ransomware activity. So I think that's,
and even if you wanted to do a randomized check, right? So it's not like you have to do everything. You can say, I'm going to take some randomization and spot check, every so many VMs or any backups rather, and check those for things for
that's another big feature of the 12.1 is you can randomize and you can pick up to like 10. So you're not overloading your backup infrastructure to do these kind of tests. So think of a really big environment to test all your VMs on a weekly schedule. That's going to take a lot of CPU, right? A lot of cycles. So to randomize it, just to kind of make sure that you're hitting every single data point across, maybe a month. There's just a lot more options with the Sure Backup, which is really great. And everyone's really
Sure Backup is something that I always have to remind some of our customers that exists. Not that it's a bad thing, but a lot of times people will get rolling with backups and they're like, okay, great, that's the product does this. And then I'll start talking to them, especially when they come and they'll ask us about, hey, I need to run a patch or I need to do some maintenance and they want to do a test or something. And I'm like, well, you have Veeam Sure Backup. Why don't you just set it up? It's not really that hard. I mean, it does take a little bit of like basic networking skills, but if you can read the instructions, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And if I can figure it out, I mean, anybody can, right? So I set it up in my lab and it was like, what I like about it, it allows you to, in an isolated environment, use your hypervisor system to boot up, to do instant recovery of X number of VMs. Mm-hmm. But it does it in a small isolated network. You're not having to create VMware networks. It actually does it through a little Linux appliance, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. But then what's nice is as your machines come up, if they're running Active Directory, SQL Server, you name it, you can run these checks to make sure that these products are up and running. These services are up and running in a certain fashion. And a lot of customers, they it's almost like, I'm not gonna say a lot, but there are some customers I've found that they're a little bit apprehensive until I show them, hey, let's do this real time. I'll show you how to set it up. And then once they kind of play with it, they're like, man, I can use this before I apply some patches and I want to see what happens. I'll boot up a lab. There's my VMs. Let me see what will happen if I do this. And then all of a sudden they're calling me back going, man, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Because you can use it as like a test dev environment. Like we use that same infrastructure. You can do patch testing on it. You can do SQL Server testing, things like that. I think the problem was it was kind of hidden and embedded inside the backup infrastructure where you had to deploy the data lab first, and then the application groups, and then you'd have the Sure Backup on the home tab to kick off that job and schedule that job. Now, like, because you don't have to do data labs anymore, it's a lot easier to find. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think in the UI it's going to be as an option as far as like backup copy, Sure Backup, right? But the biggest point is we don't have to figure out how to do data labs if you just want to, scan your backups.
Just want to scan your backups. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is a great feature. And I think that's going to be really cool from a complete cybersecurity package. But there's more, right? So 4 eyes authorization, right?
Yes.
Where with this is, if an administrator, and this is not necessarily cybersecurity. I guess you could call it cyber. It's more like just security, right?
Right.
And this is the ability where when you turn this on, this enforces, if you're doing a significant change to your backup infrastructure or doing a restore, this requires 2 administrators to kind of turn your key at the same time, right? Yeah. From war games, turn your key, sir, right?
Exactly. Think of the Pentagon when they're launching the new.
Exactly. Yeah. So it definitely gives an extra level, again, not necessarily cybersecurity, but it gives you another level of defense from if it's a rogue administrator or someone does hack into your system and they're like, aha, I'm going to delete all your backup jobs, or launch a bunch of restores and, do something crazy with your system. This is another level of security, right? Another layer.
Yeah. So we're protecting our backups. So backup deletion, repository deletion, things like that. Any kind of modification that, skews a little bit of the access control. So, William, you can kick that off. Michael can come in as a CISO, and you guys can both turn the key and make sure that, hey, we're authorizing this is authorized to delete that backup, delete that repository.
But I will plug that we do still have things like insider data protection. That's not insider. Is it insider data protection? What was that?
Insider protection.
Insider protection. And we use that. We use that here at DartPoint, so we can enable that for our customers. And that basically is if someone were to go in and delete backup jobs, even if they were to delete the repository data at their local prem, it doesn't delete stuff up in Cloud Connect.
Right. On your schedule. So it could be up to 10 days or something like that. But you guys can recover that for the customer if they have any kind of insider threat. Right.
Layer upon layer upon layer protection,
Absolutely. That really is the name of the game when it comes to cybersecurity. The other thing I will mention, and this is nothing new for 12.1, this was added in 12.0, but I'm going to say this here. If you're not enabling 2FA multi-factor authentication on your Veeam console, you need to do it. And I've gotten on it like the last 2 weekends in a row. I literally spent all day Saturday going through all of my password management systems, going, anything that has 2FA, I'm turning it on.
Right.
So literally my wife is like, are you finished? I'm like, no, I got like 50 more sites to do. And literally I enabled 2FA on everything. And again, this is, when it comes to things in IT, we take this stuff very seriously. And you don't want someone just playing around with Veeam, getting into it. So doing 2FA, again, it's a no-brainer. There's no extra cost for setting this up. I mean, it's
like
right
I said,
there.
12 was a huge security release. This is a layer on top of that. We have the security and compliance analyzer. So in 12, it was called the best practice analyzer.
Yeah.
That look for things just like, do you have MFA turned on? Do you have RDP turned off? Whatever kind of, Veeam, like I said, preemptively, it's very easy to install and deploy on a Windows server, so with that, there could be a lot of missed things to make sure that your backups are safe, right? Sometimes, hey, we just install it. All right, let's start kicking off backups. It's on the same domain, things like that, but we have a security compliance analyzer that's kind of like a chapter 2 of our best practice analyzer from 12 that kind of goes through and looks at the best practice to see if you're leveraging best practice. It can give you some good ideas of like, hey, maybe you should do this as far as best practice to make sure your backups are more secure. But with 12.1.2, we're going to have the threat center, right? Mm-hmm. So the threat center from Veeam 1 will give you a good scorecard based on how you deployed it and what you're using. Are you using immutability on-prem? Are you using immutability in dark, right? Based on that, we give you a pretty good, we'll give you a score based on what you're setting up and what you didn't set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually correct me if I'm wrong or not, but this is in the VBR interface. You don't have to go to Veeam 1 to get this. It may use the Veeam 1 engine, but it's not like you have to go out to a different site. It's actually built into VBR, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is another exciting feature that I'm excited about because, we have different components. We have Veeam 1 for reporting and monitoring. We have VBR over here, but we're starting to integrate those things, right? So we have monitoring and reporting that we can see from I'm not going to say single pane of glass. That's, but from VBR, we can see that help center. You'll see the heat maps. You'll see everything. So for example, when you turn on that malware detection, that's going to bump up your proxy usage a little bit. So we can look at the integration with Veeam 1 inside of the VBR to see if you're taxing out the proxy, if you need to add more compute or anything like that. But it also, the new thing with Veeam 1 is a threat center. Again, it gives you that scorecard, but you can see that from here. And another good thing I like about the integration too is in lieu of just going into each job and seeing when those backups start to run, it has a calendar of your different backups all in one view to where like, hey, here's a sure backup job that we're running every Saturday. So, you know, you have that single look and feel. But then if you need to get a Veeam to modify any of the of that reporting, you just hit the button from VBR, it takes you straight to Veeam.
Yeah, I like the scorecarding because that lets you kind of keep track of where you're at, and you know you can have some friendly, you know, who's got the highest score, who's got the highest cyber threat scorecard in Veeam. I can see that coming. I know, you know, little friendly competition.
Yeah, it's especially good for leadership, right? Because a lot of times people at the highest levels of the organization don't understand the nuts and bolts of all of this. So, you know, you can talk about Four Eyes authorization and YARA rules and all this stuff, but to be able to show them a scorecard and be like, hey, this is our percentage, then that clicks, right, for the people that kind of run the organization. So
yeah, and we don't hold you to these best practice stuff too. So for example, if you don't want to turn off RDP for certain scenarios, right, you can kind of turn that off to where it doesn't modify your score any as well. It's, you know, based on your business and your business decisions, you can look at other things that kind of bumps up the scorecard.
I think Michael will say that we will always say turn off RDP. Maybe internal networks, okay, but you know, we get squirrely when people say, "Oh, leave RDP on."
Yeah,
right, Michael.
The console input, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of wraps up some of the cybersecurity stuff, and I will say, in this release, it is heavily cybersecurity focused, which is great. But there's more yet. One more thing. Well, there's actually 3 or 4 more things, but
the whole list. Yeah.
You know, and again, I know some people in this audience, I'm looking at Michael, don't want to hear anything about AI. It's like, oh, you know, the next buzzword. But there is a Veeam AI assistant built into your VBR server. Correct. And that is actually, it's not Clippy. All right. This is an actual useful AI, right? It's built on a GPT technology. And the engine actually runs on your Veeam server. It's not going out to the internet and like doing any AI stuff on the internet. It is pulling from the Veeam KB articles. So as the AI is being trained, it's pulling its data sets from the Veeam knowledge base articles, which, I mean, I love Veeam, right? But I'm not going to spend days and hours of my day just perusing KB articles unless there's something I really need. And not to say that I can never, I find things in the KB articles when I search for it, right? So the search engine's great, but now you can do this inside the console, right? So it'll like basically it's built its neural network, its kind of intelligence from every entry, right? Every knowledge base article that's been approved. So you're getting really useful data. And also, I think, and I heard this on another podcast, that it's actually pulling from the transcripts from the YouTube content.
From the YouTube
heard that last night. Well, I'm going to verify that, and I'll put it in the show notes. But I think it's also pulling from there. So the idea is, if you're you know, you need to know how to do something.
Oh, link actually channel of Veeam's YouTube channel. That's where you're
Veeam's YouTube channel. Yeah, not just open, right? And that's one of the things I like about, you know, AI in general, right? It's not general intelligence. It's actually trained on a specific data set. So you can't ask it, you know, how long do I cook my pizza tonight? Yeah, it'll tell you to go search Google, right? But if you're saying, how do I restore a SQL Server table, but I want the data but not the metadata, it'll tell you exactly how to do it. And real world language
for sure backup. You know, you can just go inside of the GUI and look that up. So yeah, it has the KBs, it has the help centers, all the really helpful help centers that we have. Yeah, so to your point, we don't necessarily have to have internet access to reach out. You know, AI goes and collects the data, maybe a Google or something like that, but it's all embedded inside of the software that gets updated for sure.
We should ask it, should we turn off RDP? That's what we should.
Yeah. Well, we need a mascot, right? So when you launch the AI assistant, it needs to be like a virtual head of Anton Gostev, who's like sitting there talking to you.
Yeah, like
you know,
you mentioned Clippy.
It needs a mascot. Yeah. So the AI assistant, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think with error messages and things like that, it'll be really helpful for that. And then you should just be able to copy and paste, and so you can kind of proactively work on certain things, on certain errors before you leverage support or something like that.
Yeah. So the one other thing, object storage is a source. So in the past, I don't think you could back up to object storage, like if you had Wasabi or an S3 compatible bucket that you want to do like a capacity tier and that type of thing. But now we can actually back up S3 incompatible storage into Veeam. So S3 compatibility and also Microsoft Blob Storage, I think, is going to be compatible.
So as a source, so think about our NAS backup, how we do change file tracking. We'll flag different changes and just go to those changes, back up those changes. So it's the same concept, build the same way, but it's but now we can use, because S3 storage, object storage is used for many different things besides backup targets, right? I mean, we can use it for web pages, we can use it for file shares. So now we're able to, that was a huge ask. Now we're able to back that up as a source to on local storage or another object storage, right? So that's huge. That was a big ask.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, and I think that many people are going to take advantage of that because, object storage is great. It's very available, but some people do want to look, I want to have a copy of that somewhere offline. I want to put it on whatever type of storage I want, whatever type of repository. And it's just that layer of feeling like, okay, I really can get over anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
Object storage in general is, if you look at S3 compatibility or blob storage, it's pretty resilient in the first place, but maybe you want to get it out of where it is and put it somewhere else. Veeam is a good tool for doing that.
100%. Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of wrapping it up, guys, on the things that we wanted to talk about. We do like to kind of keep the podcast under an hour. We're almost to the 10-minute mark of being an hour. So we want to kind of tail it off, but I do want to give a little teaser, right? Veeam has always been integrated into our DartPoints data centers outside of the South Central region, right? So Asheville, our Cincinnati, our cloud data centers, right? Where customers that are in the Cloud Director, right? So people who are running their VMs in our cloud can back up those VMs with Veeam, right? And it's integrated into the vCloud Director interface through service insertion and things like this, right? So a customer can be on a single pane of glass, access their VMs, do work, but also can click the More button on vCloud Director, and then there's data protection, and then they can go in to configure backups. A little teaser. It's not available right now as of today in the South region in our Baton Rouge and Shreveport data centers, but it's coming sometime in Q1. We'll be able to offer this to our customers. Nice. Love it. All right, guys. Well, I want to say thank you. I think this has been a very good kind of, if you weren't able to watch all of the sessions on the Veeam Resiliency Summit, this is by no means a cliff notes to that show, right? Because honestly, I think if you listen to this, go back and look at the Resiliency Summit recording, right? I'll put the link in the show notes to where if you want to go get more and see guys like Rick Vanover and Gustav and all those guys from Veeam to see this stuff. Alan, yeah, this is, it's great. And I think this is going to be a very big update. It's in beta now, but I think the idea is, unless there's something, you go beta, release candidate, general availability, right? So yes. I think beta is a strong beta right now, and I think we'll, not speaking for anybody, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed by, January we'll see something.
Yes, I would say January is a reasonable target, but probably before then, we'll see.
This gives Michael just plenty enough time to go get his Veeam certification and his T-shirt and his socks.
We got a new logo. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. New logo. Yeah, I like it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Listeners, please check out the rest of our podcasts. We're available on the Apple Podcast application. We're also available on Spotify, We can also be found on YouTube. So this, there'll be two versions of this podcast. One that just is audio, right? In case someone wants to just take it on their mobile device and stream it, while they're driving or, doing whatever. But there'll also be a video podcast that will be available on YouTube. It'll be out later today. If it's not out today, sometime over the weekend. I usually like to do a little bit of editing and things like this. So be on the lookout there. And then on our Dart Points website, when you go to, I think it's Resources Podcast, there should be a link there that you can actually talk to the podcaster. So if you want to send Michael and myself a message saying, I want to be on the podcast, or you should talk about XYZ, you can interface with us. So we love to hear from our listeners and keep engagement going.
Hey, William, Michael, really appreciate you having Lee and I on the podcast here. And if, I can tell you Dart Points is one of our premier partners, and we're really excited, as far as 2024 goes and what we're going to see between each other. So thank you guys for having us.
Thank you so much for coming, and you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys. This is fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
See y'all.